Hey folks, welcome to Market Technical Analysis by InTheMoneyStocks.com, your leader in pure technical analysis, avoiding all that Wall Street hype. Today, Monday, June 2nd, 2008. Well, I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend over the past couple days, and we're going to get right into the markets today and discuss what happened. Well, you guys know that we've been calling for a move down in the markets on Monday, June 2nd, and sure enough, today, Monday, June 2nd, there was a substantial move down in the markets. We saw the overall markets dip, Dow down 135, Nasdaq down 31, and the S&P was down almost 15 points. A substantial decline across the boards, led mostly by financials. Now, this is the key, guys. You guys know that we analyze charts. We don't know any insider information. We don't know anything secret. But what did we point out on Friday that made us think that this market was setting up for a fall? The financials. We pointed out the XLF. We pointed out the UBS chart as being majorly weak, and this led us, a bunch of these charts led us to believe that this market was due for something based on the financials. And sure enough, today, the S&P downgraded a bunch of these financial firms, and Wachovia precisely had some direct news associated with that stock, and the financials got hammered today. So InTheMoneyStocks.com nailing the drop on the markets here, and I'm just going to show you on the daily chart before we get into the intraday. There's the drop. You had the little bounce we called for last week, and then the drop today, which we called to a T for Monday. Now the question is, where do we head from now? But before we get into that, let's go over the intraday analysis, and we're going to talk a little bit on the ES intraday. Alrighty, here we have the ES futures, and again, this is the ES M8 June 08 contract on the E-minis S&P 500. And what you can see here is that the selling really began at the open of the market. Look at this little trend here. And those of us that know pattern, and again, we follow pattern, price, time in our proprietary analysis, know that this pattern especially is known for being a very bearish pattern. And notice the trend line I just drew in underneath here. You had the touches, multiple touches, and then look at when this breaks. Boom. And sure enough, you get a hard sell-off to this point. Then you get what we looked to be a little double bottom, and you saw the little double bottom bounce there, and then a failure of that double bottom right at the end of lunch, where, again, hard selling came in on heavy volume. Sure enough, volume began to lighten up about mid-afternoon, 1:30-ish time frame, as we got into that mid-afternoon area. And once that volume got light, guys, the markets just started to trend sideways to up for the rest of the day. And look at the volume here, all right? Look at the sell-off here, all right? Note the hard sell-off, and look at the volume. Boom, huge volume. Notice the little bit of choppy trading, a little bit of bounces. Notice the volume get light again. Then here again, big down candle, big volume. And then notice the volume gets super light here as you see this trending up. And look at the volume here for most of the rest of the day. And you got a little bit of an extra kick towards the end of the day, bouncing us to the 50 moving average right here. But nonetheless, very interesting trading today. We were dead on this call on the market dropping, and we'll talk about our coming calls in the coming days, weeks, and overall for the rest of the month that we think in June will happen. All right. Now, one thing I want to point out here, just like this was a bearish, in spirit of bear pattern that we have coined here, note this pattern as well. This is somewhat of a bullish pattern, as you see it kind of hugging the 20 moving average on the way down. This is always setting up, or usually sets up, for a possibility of a break up, and sure enough, into the close it did break up. So that's a nice little pattern formation there that in the chat room we were discussing. My partner was making the call for that one in the chat room as we were setting up for that little rally into the close. Now let's talk a little bit about the daily charts, and we're going to get into this overall. Then maybe we'll look at a few stocks. Again, I told you the financials were setting up for some downdrafts, or they were telling us that the market was on this bounce, going to retrace, come back in, and that's exactly what happened. So here you had the little retrace last week, and just to go over this whole chart here, here's the Bear Stearns news right down here. This is where we called for that bottom in the markets, and we traveled this market all the way to this point here, at which point we called a top right here. Market retraced, we called a little bit of a bounce. It went a little higher, but made a beautiful double top, and then we saw the downdraft come in. We called for the bounce right off this point right here for the 50, which was last week, and again, the sell-off coming on Monday, which was today. So a beautiful little angled chart here of our calls over the past a month or two, which have been absolutely dead on. And if you go back and do our track record, you can see that over the past year we've been pretty much dead on with every move, minor and major move in the markets on the S&P and so forth. So in any case, nonetheless, we sold off hard today, and we did bounce late in the day, which I showed you on the intraday chart. But notice where that bounce came in. Here you have the 50 moving average on the daily. We came down hard, touched it, and then bounced off of it, still closing down substantially on the day. Again, I did mention that the Dow was down 134 and the Nasdaq down 31. So we had a big down day, but a good bounce off the lows as well. Now, usually when you bounce off the lows, it sets up for more downside in the coming days. So I want to let everyone understand that, is that when you close at the lows, it's oftentimes on heavy volume a sign that the market's bottoming out. When you bounce off the lows into the close on light volume, oftentimes it's setting up for more downside. Now, it doesn't mean that immediately tomorrow we're going to see more downside, but what we're seeing here over the next few days, it's very likely we do see quite a bit more downside in this market. All right, and we'll continue to follow that closely. Now, let's go to the Nasdaq chart, because I wanted to point this out. On this chart, the beauty of this chart, and what I've been talking about, those of you that have been following the videos, we've been talking about a head and shoulders possible formation on this chart. And here you can see that this looks to be possibly coming to fruition. We have to really track it here, but nonetheless, you have shoulder, head, shoulder, and obviously we want to draw a little bit of a neckline here. You can draw it up here, or either way, you can draw it to the bottoms. Either way, you're still looking here for a possible move down to complete that right side of the shoulder, and then we'll reanalyze it. And the way it's looking right now is the 50 moving average, which I'm tracking with my cursor here, over here, looks to be moving right up into that. So that's where you're going to have support right on this line here, and that's going to equal probably the 50 moving average once we get that down to that point. So a very, very interesting pattern-oriented market right now with a lot of keys in it. And again, part of this is time valued. All right, we follow price, pattern, and time is a key component, obviously. So the timing of this fall was key, and that's how we knew it was going to come today, and why we were so dead on most of these market moves over the past year or two. All right, now again, we talked about financials. Now let's look at the XLF here. Let's quickly flip to the XLF, and here you go, XLF making this sideways pattern when the market was bouncing up, and I pointed these out on Friday. Market bounced like this. XLF was going sideways, and now it's beginning to break lower. We'll have to see how low it goes. I'm not 100% sure. We're not sure of how much lower this is going to go. But nonetheless, you can even look at Goldman Sachs. Look at the fall on Goldman Sachs today on the daily. You had this in spirit of bear flag pattern, and then the drop today. We talked about UBS and really pinpointed UBS. And look at this stock. I mean, this thing just can't get a bid. We're looking at the daily of UBS here, and this is a Swedish bank here. A Swiss bank. Excuse me, Swiss bank. And what you can see here is definitely very, very weak. I mean, this thing can't get a bid. And you're looking at it now coming into a double bottom range on this chart. All right? So we're going to have to see where this is going. But this looks like there's something going on here. And I pointed this out on Friday. Who knows what's going on? Maybe nothing at all. But the way this is trading makes me think, look, especially on the heavier volume here, that something's amiss with UBS. And we'll have to continue to watch it and see if anything comes out on it. All right. Now, looking at technology overall, technology performed all right today. You saw a dip in technology with the market being down, but the large caps, you know, they did sell off. Google was down about 11, Baidu down 7, Apple down 265, and Research in Motion down $1.85. But overall, that wasn't a substantial, you know, it wasn't a huge loss by any stretch. All right. But nonetheless, very, very interesting there. Oil. Let's touch on oil today and some of these other commodities. We saw the USO being basically flat on the day, and notice where it is. Here's the daily USO. USO is hovering right here on the 20. This is support right here on the 20. Should this break lower, well, then you're going to see more downside, obviously. Probably first support would be somewhere in this range right here on the USO. Then it would be at the 50 moving average, which is right here. All right, those would be the next two areas of support should this break. But while this is holding, that's going to be solid support. So it has to break first. Once it breaks, you should see this point and then possibly this point hit on the USO. But it was a non-event for oil today. And again, that's the key, is that a lot of times we see the market trading up and then the oil's inversely down and it's allowing the market to go up, and vice versa. When oil's up, the market's down. But today that didn't matter. Oil was actually up at $1.40 at one point, and the markets were still getting slammed. So our point here is that the coordination of those two going in opposite directions only lasts so long until other nerves, other issues in the economy that you're dealing with and the fears override it. And right now, today, that was happening. All right, the GLD, we'll touch on the GLD here, which was up about 50 cents, and this is hovering right here. A lot of resistance right up here. You got the 50 moving average here and the 20 here, and this is possibly making a setup for another fall in the gold and GLD. So you may see this set up, and this may turn over and roll down now. Now, the other thing I want to point out is solar stocks. First Solar getting pounded again today, down $11.58. And whenever oil is neutral or weak here, it seems like the solar stocks are getting hit pretty hard. So, again, we saw oil neutral today, and then a lot of these solars had run up so much that they're due for a pullback. That's about all for today. I encourage you all to come join the Intraday E-mini Stock Chat, which is a forum of pro and amateur investors, and we all just sit around and chat with each other. We call out trades that we see. We call out key technical analysis stuff. Nick and myself, we talk all about technical stuff all day long in the markets, helping you learn it. It's a phenomenal product. The swing trade alerts, continue to come join that, and we'll be posting a new webinar, which will be a week from Saturday on the website for you all that want to take a webinar. Have a wonderful day, folks. We'll talk to you tomorrow.